Australia, known all over the world, home of two of the most famous landmarks in the world and the oldest city in Australia. Australia is treasured land of the oldest civilization in the world, Aborigine people. These people lived and thrived in the Sydney Cove for at least 50,000 years before Europeans came to this area.
There's 600 nations that make up Indigenous Australia, so basically there's 500 languages and a breakdown of around 300 different dialects. I come from just one of these 600 nations. The nation itself is called the Wani Nation, at the bottom of the Gulf of Carpentaria.
The natural lifestyle and way of life quickly was drastically changed with the arrival of Europeans. Today, sadly 2% of the population in Australia are now Aborigine.
It means that I'm one of only 2% of this country, which is around, well, 2.5% now. We're around 500,000. So I'm one of 500,000 people that come from one of the oldest living races on planet Earth. So that's quite a, when you look at that ratio, the statistic there, 500,000 of us is not many compared to the 22 million people that live here in Australia. So it means that I'm one of those unique group, and we're also a very vulnerable group, so I find ourselves extremely vulnerable, especially in a big city like this.
The first European to come to Sydney was Captain Philip Arthur in 1788. He came with 11 ships to Sydney Cove. The goal was to establish a prison settlement for British convicts. He named it after Secretary Lord Sydney, who issued charter to establish a penal colony in the area. The Rocks, as they are known today, was the birthplace of Sydney. The convicts lived in this area, and sailors spent their time here forgetting harsh sea life. The Sydney landscape started to be modified during the 19th century. As the wool industry began to thrive, more people came, more convicts were freed, and the economy was growing, and Sydney was developing fast. The Sydney Opera House is the most iconic symbol of Australia, and also the busiest performing arts centre in the world. The planning of the venue started in 1947. An international competition for the design was put out to the world, and the winner was announced in January of 1957. A Danish architect, Bjørn Utzon. It was only supposed to take 4 years to complete, but was finally finished in 1973 with a cost of $102 million. Today, over 3,000 events a year are held in the Opera House, audiences up to 2 million, and countless people photographing this iconic symbol daily. Known to the locals as the Coat Hanger, the Sydney Harbour Bridge is the largest steel bridge in the world, rising to 134 meters above the harbour. As early as 1815, it was proposed to build a bridge from the northern shore to the southern shore. Building started in 1924. It took 1,400 men, 4.2 million pounds, and 8 years to complete the structure. Once completed in 1932, they tested the capacity with 96 steam locomotives. Once the bridge was opened, daily traffic was about 11,000 a day. Today, around 160,000 vehicles cross the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Today, you can find all types of people here in the city. Tourists, local, Aborigines, Australians from the other side of the country, and also people from other countries trying to live here.
My name is Hong Kyu. I'm Australian. I'm working in the Rocks, a small souvenir shop. It's a really nice souvenir shop.
My name's Julian. I'm from Brisbane in Queensland, and I'm just here for 3 days. I went for a wedding yesterday. My brother got married.
I'm Livana, and I'm from Pickers Heights. Yes. And I work at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and it's a good place to visit.
I do traditional dancing as my occupation. We do a lot of corporate Sydney, the education system, and also international. Also, we do a lot of work for government departments as well.
I've caught up with a lot of friends because I've got friends in Sydney, so and also family. My brother obviously lives here. I've walked around the harbour, of course. It's beautiful down here, and just came from the park, the Botanic Gardens, I think they're called. Really nice. I haven't done a lot of typical tourist things. I've just taken it easy.
Where are the typical tourist things?
I guess the Harbour Bridge climb. That's pretty standard.
I think the best parts of the city are definitely the harbour, the Opera House, we've got the bridge. We've got some of the best views in Sydney right here.
Well, it's vibrant. It's got, all the arts. It's very cultural. Not like Melbourne, I guess, but still, we're getting there.
It's fairly busy, I guess. People are always doing a lot of business here, I suppose, but it's very international as well. So you've got tourists from all over the place. Yeah, it's much busier than any other part of Australia for sure. It's the busiest point. Everyone wants to come to Sydney, I imagine, and it's very stereotypical Australia with the harbour and everything.
Sydney is a very famous city in Australia. They got the Opera House, Harbour Bridge, and in this place is the rocks. The Sydney city starts in the rocks, so I like it.
I love the harbour, yeah, and I love being out on the harbour. If you come to Sydney, don't just get out on the harbour. Don't just stay in the centre. Get out on the harbour, see the harbour. We've got Cedar Point Tower, we've got Hyde Park, which is quite beautiful to just go relax in, but get out and see the harbour. Get out over to the heads, if you can get out to the National Park. Probably Manly, Bondi Beach is definitely a big one, especially for the English tourists. They love Bondi Beach. I think that we need the tourism, and Sydney thrives of tourism.
It's really important for us to be here when people, we've travelled overseas and we've seen Tourism Australia at their best around the world. And basically what they see is Aboriginal images, Aboriginal people, Aboriginal music, didgeridoo, blah, 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 Australia this, Australia that. And the people come here and they see nothing. They get off a plane in Sydney, they see nothing. So we're here to provide that for the people, to show that our culture is still alive and strong, and that we're also here existing in Sydney as well.
It's good to have your country desired in a way, and I think we're fairly open to tourism, and I always like meeting people. I actually just met up with someone I hadn't talked to before, a stranger, and she was from Chile. So I just talked to her about her country, and I'm always happy to talk about Australia.
We made a lot of friends from everywhere. Some friends from Canada, they come several years, they come back, several years, they come back.
People all over the world dream of coming to Sydney. There is so much history, culture, things to do and see, so many different people to encounter. It's a city you will never forget, and a city you will always want to come back to.
Come back and say good day sometime. That was cheesy.